In Changes, Bowie found the key to happiness: changing yourself by giving in to strange fascinations. When you are fascinated by something that is alien to your logic, and you allow yourself to be taken over by that fascination, it transforms you, and the process induces joy. The question now becomes, what is there in the world around him that is alien to his logic, and which also fascinates him? One answer was the underground gay culture, which was beginning to become more visible at the time. Homosexuality was recently made legal, but it was still an alien. Why? Because the Victorian mentality that ruled the UK, the US, and most of the Western world regarded sexuality as something very well defined. There were men, there were women, they were attracted to each other, and their mutual attraction was ultimately meant to lead to marriage and procreation. Anything else was considered to be against nature and morality. But throughout the 20th century, under the surface of Victorianism, thrived the gay subculture, in which gender and orientation were a lot more flexible and diverse, and where sex was done for recreation. In the minds of the regular folk, those gay people were unnatural and immoral, which meant that they were capable of any depravity. All manners of sexual perversion were therefore attached to the stereotype of the gay person, which made them ever more frightening. The fear was that if you open yourself up even a little to homosexuality, you will become perverted, and slide into the world of S&M, fetishism, transgenderism, pedophilia, and more. But times were beginning to change. In the wake of the sexual revolution, sex was no longer regarded as a means for procreation, but as a means to have a good time, and people were ready to experiment. The gay world was still frightening, but also alluring. Actually, in England, homosexuality wasn't completely alien. Gay people found social spaces that accepted them, and avenues in which they could express themselves. Gays were very instrumental in the rise of pop culture in Britain, and the swinging 60s might not have happened if it wasn't for gay stylists, designers, and managers who infused the camp irony and style into the mix. Bowie himself was a protege of such a manager, the erudite Ken Pitt. Another place was British theatre, where homosexuality was practically a rite of passage, and Bowie, who was introduced to the thespian crowd through the ultra-campy Lindsay Kemp, got a real taste of it. His ties to the gay underground were further cemented by his marriage to the bisexual Angela Barnett, and the couple's frequenting of gay bars and discos. Through these connections, Bowie acquired knowledge and feel for the gay life, and with the Arnold Corns project, he already tried to turn it into something that would cause a stir. The English public, however, remained indifferent. Gayness just wasn't all that alien and shocking. In America, on the other hand, things were quite different. Gay culture was driven deep underground, and found almost no expression in mainstream culture. Consequently, when gays did express themselves, they did it in a more aggressive, outrageous, and in-your-face manner. One American institution that did accept them was Andy Warhol, whose entourage included some fabulous gay characters, adding to his glamorous image. Under Warhol, they could reach a larger crowd, and when some of them put on a trashy play called Pork, they got to take it all the way to London at the end of 1971. This introduced Bowie to the more bizarre world of New York gayness, and he was fascinated. The Pork cast, on the other hand, were not impressed by Bowie, which shows us that at the time he still lacked the edge needed to be a true alien. Thankfully, they did like his more outgoing wife, and through this connection, Bowie would eventually develop that edge, and even turn the Pork people into part of his entourage. No less important, he established a link to Warhol's crowd, and through that, to another kind of alien he was drawn to, a musical alien. What was it that made the Velvet Underground so alien and antithetical to the logic of the hippie counterculture? Several things, really. For starters, their music wasn't based on blues scales, but built around John Cale's electric viola and organ sounds, taken from the European avant-garde, over which Lou Reed delivered his poetry in an unmelodic, half-spoken, nagging style. Secondly, while the hippies espoused a return to nature, Reed took his subject matter from the characters that populated the streets of New York, including those unnatural gay people. And thirdly, hippie rock was usually a personal confession, seen as a soulful expression of the singer's humaneness, while Reed was usually assuming a character and portraying the seedier sides of the human experience. Listeners who were used to think of music as a personal expression confused Reed with his characters and saw him as depraved. But it went even deeper than that. The hippies believed that once we unmask the fake identities that society thrusts upon us and liberate our inner selves, we will come together in harmony and love. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll were methods to do so, to break out of your shell and unite with your brothers and sisters. In the Velvet's records, on the other hand, the characters who do sex, drugs, and rock and roll also want to break away from society, except they do it not to find their real self, but simply because they want to disappear, to erase the self. Thus, the junkie in Heroin does drugs because he wants to nullify my life. The masochist in Venus in Furs does S&M because he wants to sleep for 1,000 years. And the singer of White Light, White Heat describes a quasi-religious experience in which your entire being is consumed by white light and heat. The Velvet Underground, then, hammered at the foundation that the hippie logic stood on. On one hand, they were part of the 60s rebellion, taking the sex, drugs, rock and roll credo further than anyone else. On the other hand, their art suggested that what awaits at the end of the voyage is not happiness and harmony, but the void. No wonder, then, that they so perturbed the hippie mind, and were marginalized in the predominantly hippie rock world of the late 60s. Bowie's mind, though, worked differently. He was already into the Velvets back in 1966, when Ken Pitt got him an acetate of their first album, and they were his secret love affair, so alien to the sprightly world of mid-60s London. We don't know how much of an influence they exerted on him at the time, but the fact is that in '67 he started to write theatrical songs about deviant characters, more comical in nature, but containing hints of the darkness that only the Velvets touched upon. In Little Toy Soldier, a record about a girl who owns a mechanical whip-wielding soldier which she uses as a sex toy to satisfy her masochistic fantasies, he blatantly paraphrases the Velvets' Venus in Furs. So the Velvets were always there in the background, but now in the early 70s, after the hippie dreams were dashed, their music suddenly started to make more and more sense. After the man who sold the world tried to escape the city, and go up the mountains to look for alien encounters that might change his world, Bowie was now ready to look for the alien in the dark corners of city life, among the urban characters found in the Velvet Underground's albums. Queen Bitch marks his first attempt.
I'm up on the 11th floor and I'm watching the cruisers below.
The beginning of the record finds our hero in a hotel room, looking at the street below. If we wish to take it allegorically, which of course we do, we will say that it symbolizes Bowie the songwriter, who stands apart from society and describes the people in it from a seemingly higher point of view.
It's down on the street and it's dry hard to forces the flow.
Now we hear of another character, one who actively participates in the daily life of society. This guy, apparently, is trying to seduce a lady.
Oh, my heart's in the basement, my weekends at an all-time low.
The third couplet is a reversal of the first. Although he is seemingly higher than the cruisers below, he actually feels lower than them. Something depresses him. Until now, Bowie was comfortable being a mirror image to society, describing without participating. Now, suddenly, there's a feeling that he is missing out on something.
'Cause she's hoping it's a scar, so I can't see her letting him go. Walk out of her heart, walk out of her mind. Oh, not her.
And the fourth couplet is a reversal of the second. The guy thought that he was the pursuer, but the singer, from his vantage point, observes that he is actually the pursued. This woman is not the usual kind. She's something else.
She's an old-time ambassador, sweet-talking, night-walking games. Oh, and she's known in the darkest clubs for pushing ahead of the dames. If she says she can't do it, then she can't do it. She don't make false claims. But she's a queen, and such a queen, such a laughter is sucked in the brain.
The lady is the queen of the nightlife, ruler of that shady sexual world which normal folks dare not tread. That other guy is in over his head with her, and he is about to become her prey. This is a rather rare scenario in a world where women were still expected to play the passive role, but we've met this scenario before in Bowie's music. In She Shook Me Cold, the hero is a man who treats women as objects for conquering, until he comes upon a woman who subdues him with her sexual prowess and turns him into her love slave. But there, the meeting takes place in some magical location, and it is suggested that she has supernatural powers. The queen bitch, on the other hand, is a real-life person, straight from the underbelly of the urban world. She brings to mind the femme fatale that the Velvet Underground sang about. She may be despised by society, but she is impervious to this mockery. Or as he puts it, it is sucked in her brain. She knows who she is and what she wants. In that, she has the edge over the regular people who conform to society's norms, and that gives her the ability to manipulate them.
Now she's leading him on, and she'll lay him right down. Yes, she's leading him on, and she'll lay him right down. But it could have been me, yes, it could have been me. Why didn't I say, why didn't I say, now.
Suddenly, we have a twist. It turns out that the singer isn't mocking the other guy, but actually envies him. He wants to be her sexual prey, and apparently he had his chance, but chickened out. So now he's relegated to the role of voyeur, missing out on the experience. This is why he is so depressed. Another thing that attracts him about her is her glamour, but the way he portrays it is curious. While the verses make it seem like Bowie is trying to imitate the style and lingo of the New York scene, the chorus brings out the Englishness of the whole affair. It's hard to imagine Lou Reed describing someone as swishy in her satin and tat. Bowie doesn't go all the way in his imitation. He retains something of his own style. The interesting line here is, "Oh God, I could do better than that." It can mean several things. Maybe he is still moaning that he missed the opportunity to do something better than sit around and mope. Maybe he is bragging that he could find a woman that is even wilder. Or maybe he thinks that he can be even swishier than her. In any case, it further manifests his desire to become part of her world.
So I lay down a while and I gaze at my hotel wall. Oh, the good is so cold, it don't feel like no bed at all. Yeah, I lay down a while, look at my hotel wall.
Boredom grows.
And he's down on the street, so I throw both his bags down the hall.
Another twist. It turns out that the other guy was his roommate. His jealous fit suggests that they may have even been lovers, and that this is a triangle story, where the queen bitch came between them. I'd rather look at it metaphorically, though. My interpretation is that we should not see them as two persons, but as two sides of Bowie's personality. The side that wants to remain as an observer portraying society through his art, and the side that wants to take part in the action. Until now, the former ruled Bowie's art, and he remained a detached songwriter, taking part in the action only through figments of his imagination. His decision to throw both his bags down the hole, to get rid of that other guy, can be understood as an announcement by Bowie the artist that from now on he will be the center of the action, not his imaginary characters. In other words, he is going to switch from the role of a standoffish songwriter to the role of a performer.
And I'm phoning a cab, 'cause my stomach feels small. There's a taste in my mouth, and it don't taste at all. It could have been me, oh yeah, it could have been me. Why didn't I say, why didn't I say, no, no, no.
His former stance, of someone who stands above society, is now felt to be tasteless. He resolves to give in to the temptations that are out there, to let the thrills and dangers of the urban world engulf him, and start living life. The record leaves a lot to the imagination, and it is unclear what exactly is going down. Are the two men lovers? Is the queen bitch actually a gay man, a queen? Is the singer also a queen, who was trying to seduce that other guy before the queen bitch beat him to it? There are many possibilities, and I will leave it to the listener to decide for themselves. What is important is that the record shatters Victorian logic, muddling the lines of gender and orientation. The penultimate track of Hunky Dory shows us that he is ready to move on to a new phase, to take the plunge from the 11th floor down to the streets. It's time to change, and since real change can only come through associating with an alien, he is going to open up to that alien world of deviant sexuality, presented through his gay friends and through the music of the Velvet Underground. He hasn't made the step yet. As the record ends, he is still in his empty cot, up in his room. But he is about to. But it also shows us that change, for Bowie, doesn't mean a total resignation to that alien from another world, to the point where it erases who you formerly were. Simply moving from one existing world to another is not change, since it doesn't create anything new. Real change is when you appropriate something from an alien world, and merge it with parts of your own world, to create something that doesn't belong in either. The album cover side notes describe Queen Bitch as some VU, white light returned with thanks. And that's basically what it does. It takes the Velvet Underground's music, reworks it and fuses it with his own, and sets it back on the world. Musically, Queen Bitch still retains the spirit of British R&B, with some Velvet Underground mannerisms, the monotonous melody, the half-spoken singing, the harder-hitting beat, worked into it, and lyrically it also fuses Reed Street poetry with Bowie's writing style. In that, Queen Bitch is a portent of the future.
You betcha. Oh yeah. Uh-huh.